It's that time of
I
year.
can hear that.
6:30.
All right. Welcome everyone to the City of North Plains City Council regular session meeting, Monday, September 16th, 2024 at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lori, roll call, please.
Mayor Linehan,
Here.
Councilor Page,
Here.
Councilor Kindle,
Here.
Councilor Martinez, Councilor Papen,
Present.
Councilor Sheldon,
Present.
and Councilor Smith. Ricky,
Unmute.
You're gonna mute, Ricky.
unmute.
Here.
Thank
All
you.
right. Good to see you, Councilor Smith. Glad that you're back on the continent, safe and sound. So we don't have microphones, but I think that we do have an upgrade here, so I feel like I'm really projecting. I
That's
don't-
okay. Better to be too loud than not be able to hear at all.
Okay, but it still picks us up.
Yes.
And we're good. Okay, great, awesome. All right. Next up is our consent agenda. I'm gonna pull 5D off of the consent agenda. It's the proclamation for October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, because I would like to read that. So we have the approval of this evening's agenda, the approval of September 3rd City Council minutes, and we also have the approval of August 26th emergency meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or additions that we need to be aware of with the minutes? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of consent agenda items A through C.
Second.
All right, we have a first by Councilor Sheldon, seconded by Councilor Kindle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. All right. Let's see. I will read the proclamation during, right before the presentation with Commissioner Woolley. So item number 6 is public comment. So at this time, is there anyone that wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda this evening? So I have Aaron Nichols for the referendum and relook. So state your name and city of residence for the record, and then Lori has her clock.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. My name is Aaron Nichols. I live at 11,000 Northwest Jackson Quarry Road, Hillsborough, Oregon, 97124. I'm going to address you tonight on a few points regarding the UGB referendum and the relook. The September 3rd council meeting, Mr. Sheldon asked to have the relook document rewritten to ensure the record was correct regarding the number of voters who voted in the election. We believe the existing phrasing in the report is correct, that 72% of the 1,286 North Plains voters cast their votes against the expansion. While we're not opposed to Mr. Sheldon's language emphasizing the overall turnout, we really should put in context. It was nearly twice the turnout in the county and the county at large, and despite being primary, the more than 1,036 votes that were the no votes were more than any councilor running in the last election received. Indeed, it was approximately the same number of voters who voted for Mr. Sheldon during his last election in a presidential election year. The point, of course, is not to compare vote tallies, but to say that a large percentage of the voters cast their votes and the results were decisive. Secondly, while we're making sure the record is correct on the relook document, it is now time to remove the language on the second page that claims the city is not bound by the results of the ballot measure. Further, when discussing HB 4026, language needs to be added to the effect the bill has since been found unconstitutional by a circuit court judge. The city is now, as it has been since May, most certainly bound by the results of a referendum. As Judge Irwin pointed out, The minimum guarantee of the Constitution shall not be allowed to be diluted by either legislative action or inaction. While he spoke of legislators in Salem, it is absolutely true of this legislative body as well. The rights of the people to referendum are not something that this body can abridge by having a qualified referendum removed from the ballot, as this body attempted to do in March, nor can it be abridged by legislative inaction by a council ignoring or disputing a clear electoral result. Considering this judicial opinion, which agreed with Friends of North Plains Smart Growth on every point, and the lack of any other lawsuit challenging the referendum, the city is now obligated, morally, if not in law, to rescind Ordinance 490 before moving on to its replacement. It makes no sense to have an invalid UGB expansion on the books while considering a new one. Further, the supporting documents, Ordinance 489, the HNA, and Ordinance 484, the EOA, should also be rescinded to make way for new supporting ordinances as this process continues. And that brings me to the relook itself. The purpose of the relook committee, as has been stated here in its founding documents, is to arrive at a UGB expansion recommendation that has the support of community members and ensures a sustainable financial future for the city. From this point, we virtually all agree. It is critical that this time around, we create a culture of listening to those who aren't in the room every day, those who cast a ballot or didn't, and those who have an opinion on their town's growth, even if they don't have time to attend a few dozen meetings about it. Comments impugning a tacit support to those who didn't vote are speculative and unhelpful. We can assume about those who didn't vote as if they didn't vote. Assumptions that no one wants more neighbors are both wrong and lack the nuance needed to think this important question through. Indeed, you need to understand the residents of the town actually think is the reason the council started the relook in the first place, and that's where we need to start. Relook, let's set electoral politics at the door and try to be open to what the residents say what they want. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for registered or would like to start public comment again on items not on the agenda? Let the record show that there's no one online raising their hand to do so. Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on to presentations. So if you would oblige, Commissioner Jerry Willie, may I do my proclamation first, and then we would love to hear from you. Are you okay with that? Hello, Rachel. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Rachel Schutz is here in the office, in the audience, and she's the executive director at the Family Justice Center. So I am proud to be able to proclaim October as the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm also proud that North Plains has been by your side since the inception and opening of the Family Justice Center. Along with so many other cities here in Washington, I think all of the cities in Washington County. So I remember that day very well when we got that wonderful tour and we got the ribbon cut, and then it was just overwhelming to see the support in the community for this, for the Family Justice Center. So, and I know over the years, you know, while I'm celebrating this, it's a heartbreaking and a sad thing that we have to celebrate this, but it's also a very important facility and a need in our community. So with that, I'm going to take a moment and just read the October Domestic Violence Awareness Proclamation, if I may. Whereas domestic violence is a serious crime that affects people of all races, ages, gender identities, socioeconomic levels, religions, backgrounds, beliefs, and abilities. Whereas domestic violence includes physical, emotional, social, sexual, spiritual, financial, and digital abuse, and can occur between family members, intimate partners, and within dating relationships. Whereas domestic violence is widespread, and it is estimated that over 12 million Americans are affected each year, and more than 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the United States report having experienced domestic violence, stalking, sexual assault, or physical assault by an intimate partner during their lifetime. Whereas 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year, and 90% of these children are eyewitnesses to this violence, and children that group up in violent homes are believed to be abused and neglected at a rate higher than the national average, often resulting in lifelong trauma. Whereas intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime, at least 19% of reported domestic violence involves the use of a weapon, and the presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Whereas in 2022, the Family Justice Center in Washington County provided 8,344 services to 4,537 survivors. Whereas domestic violence costs the nation over $8.3 billion annually in medical expenses, police and court costs, shelters, foster care, sick leave, absenteeism, and non-productivity. Whereas our law enforcement officers put their lives at risk daily responding to domestic violence incidents, and the North Plains Police Department believes only a coordinated community effort will put a stop to this cycle of violence. Whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an excellent platform to show support for the domestic violence advocates, crisis hotline staff, victim service organizations, and law enforcement officers in our community, and provides the residents of Washington County the opportunity to learn more about preventing domestic violence and show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy, resources, hope, and assistance to victims. Now, therefore, I, Terry Lenihan, Mayor of North Plains, Oregon, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in North Plains. And I just want to extend a moment to you, Rachel, if you'd like to speak to the council and to the members here in the community.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for declaring October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. As always, we deeply appreciate it. And I like to share with you every year how much it means to be a city that does these proclamations and stands up publicly and talks about domestic violence in October, and then also sexual assault and child abuse in April. It really does make a difference. We see our biggest numbers in October throughout the entire year. We always see a spike, and that is always because all of our cities and our law enforcement in Washington County really go out of their way to talk about domestic violence. One of the little idioms that we say is violence thrives in silence, and you've heard me talk about that before. But talking about it helps people in your community know that there is a safe place and that they will be believed when they come forward. And the other thing is domestic violence touches us all. I really appreciate in that proclamation the conversation about law enforcement, because it is our law enforcement officers that are the first ones to respond in emergencies involving domestic or family violence, whether it has to do with children or has to do with adults. They're the first ones that are there. And in my line of work, I haven't met anybody more committed to ending domestic violence than our law enforcement, because they're the ones that always see the worst of the worst. And if they didn't have to go to those calls, the whole world would be better for it. So I thank you very much. This means a lot to us. And on October 13th, we are having our annual Run for Hope at Hare Field. And if you guys would like to join, you are more than welcome. I think a North Plains running team would be absolutely fantastic. And so that's our community event that we all come together to create to raise awareness and try to bring people together in October. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel. Can't get away from that. All right, great. So next up, Commissioner Jerry Willey. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Mayor and City Councilors. I always yield the floor to Rachel and Family Justice Center. So I am glad that Rachel, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for all you do. And also, I'd like to say again, congratulations to your interim city manager, Rob Drake. We had a ribbon cutting last week in Cornelius for the Drake Learning Center, an honor that was well-deserved. So Rob, thank you very much for your commitment, not only to Cornelius, but certainly now to North Plains. You're doing a great job. Thank you for that. So the reason I'm here tonight is to just kind of bring you up to date on what the county has been focused their attention to over the past time, and then what's coming events. I have spent a considerable amount of time for about the last 9 months on a small table group dealing with our timber. You may know that Washington County has about 60,000 acres of timber. We are part of 15 counties called the Trust Land Counties. And several years ago, 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, those counties gave their timber rights to Oregon Department of Forestry to manage the forest for them. And so that's how the process goes. Each year, there are timber harvests. And a portion of that timber harvest money, of course, is in the Forest Grove District, which is this district, mostly Washington County, touches a little bit of a couple other counties. But each year, historically, they have harvested about 239 million board feet of timber. We now have a habitat conservation plan, which is going to significantly reduce that harvest to about 185 million board feet, which is about a 30% reduction for the Forest Grove District or Washington County. Washington County has in the past and continues about 68% of the money that we receive goes to school districts. And that's going to impact the school districts, of which North Plains is a part of the Hillsborough School District. That's about $664,000. Now that money, the Hillsborough School District, as well as all the other school districts in Washington County, are a part of the state school fund. And so that money that is not going to come to the school districts is going to need to be backfilled by the state school fund. That's going to cause a little bit of an issue. For all 15 counties, that's about $23 million impact to the state school fund. So we are working with the governor at her request to put together a small table group, of which I am one. There's 5 of us. We represent all 15 trust counties. And we've been working on what kind of a resolution can we come up with to help backfill the county's loss. The 2 largest counties are Tillamook and Clatsop County. Washington County is 3rd of the 15. And so it's a significant financial impact, not only in dollars, but economically. So, for example, we have already seen the closure of the Banks lumber. Hampton Lumber has already closed. We have lost 3 mills in the 15 counties, and we expect that continuing with the loss of more. So what all of that means is that there's an economic impact from the Habitat Conservation Plan. We have testified before the Board of Forestry that approved this plan several months ago. We have testified that the council or the counties are in support of a habitat conservation plan because we need to have protection of not only our forest, but our water, our salmon, and just a variety of other species that come into play there. This one is just a little bit too harsh. So we're trying to deal with how do we deal with the economic impact on the counties and the economic impact on special districts like fire districts and the school districts. So we are continuing to work with our governor on that. And I will keep you apprised because it does impact school districts, obviously, the Hillsborough School District. And so I will keep you apprised as to where we're going to be going with that. It is a tremendously important and complex issue. And so we will work with our governor and certainly our legislature to come up with a legislative bill in this 2025 session to try and mitigate some of the economical impact. With that, we also have, as you know, our county budget has been impacted over the last 3 years because of inflation. As you know, we are limited by the 3% property tax cap that is on that. Inflation is running at 6 to 8%, so we have to make up that gap. In addition, our legislature has given us some unfunded mandates, so we have additional services that we have to provide at the county, and there is either no funding or partial funding that isn't enough to cover that, and I'll touch on specifically in just a few minutes. One of the things that Mayor, you and Mayor Rubinek from Tualatin sent us a letter, and you're concerned about the MSTIP, which is the transportation money. We are going to be meeting with you on the 30th of September, and we're going to have a presentation on the impact that MSTIP and has on the county funding and why it is that we need to share with that. You'll also see some of the library funding that's been impacted. So I look forward to seeing you there, and we'll have a candid conversation about that. One of the exciting things that we have coming on board is what we refer to as the CAT. That's the CATT, that stands for the Center for Addiction, Triage, and Treatment. It's there'll be 2 locations, one in Hillsborough and one on the edge of Beaverton, where we will be able to provide treatment and triage for our folks that are arrested for addiction, and certainly alcohol addiction as well as drug addiction. And so we will provide 2 of the locations to provide mental health, behavioral health, and also addiction services to help them to come out of those kinds of life impacting addictions. And so we have the Beaverton location will have 86 new treatment beds. The reason that's important in that particular location is because they will have overnight facilities. So our public safety folks will have some place to take an individual that is either drunk or on drugs and be able to take them to this location instead of taking them to jail, which we don't have the facilities in jail to, of course, manage that. So this is going to be a considerable improvement to our treatment facilities for that. The Hillsborough Recovery Center, the construction has begun already. It's a building that we bought. We're rehabbing that building. That will be completed in the spring of 25. And then the Center for Addiction and Triage in Beaverton will be a little bit longer because we've got to expand that considerably. All of that money is coming from a variety of sources that we are very happy to be partners with a number of organizations for that. I won't go into all of that, but the cost of all of this is going to be somewhere around $65 million. And the good news is most of it has already been, funds have been made available. So we are looking forward to those grand openings, and we'll certainly will let you know. Staying with that same topic, you know that we had a Measure 110 passed a couple of years ago, that modified last legislative session into a deflection program. That deflection program, again, was mandated by the state that we had to open that up and make it available by September 1. We have done that. We have opened that. We have already had 2 people that have qualified for that. And so this deflection program, again, is for a person who's been arrested for possession. And they have 2 options. They can either go to jail, or they can go into the deflection program, which of course will help them get off of any addictions that they may have, and certainly give them a better opportunity than going to jail. Our jail is not, again, not equipped nor facilitated to handle these kinds of instances. So we are looking forward to the deflection program. and being able to provide services to help get out of these addiction issues. One of the things that changing gears to broadband, we've known for the last few years that broadband is certainly during our pandemic. We discovered that broadband is an essential part that every household needs to have. And when we talk about rural Washington County, before, there's a significant number of households that do not have adequate broadband. We have worked with Colpac, which is Columbia Pacific. That's the economic development area for Tillamook, Clatsop, Columbia County, and Western Washington County. We have worked with them to make sure that we have our enough surveys and enough studies done so we can apply for broadband monies to extend the ability of broadband in these rural areas. And so that is, we're not early in the process, but we're not at the end of the process either. So I will keep you apprised of that at another time. The fun part is that I can bring to you is that we have 2 trails in Washington County here that we are working on bringing them into fruition. One is the Council Creek Trail, which is basically a railroad trail, that railroad that has been, they gave that up. They haven't been using it for a number of years. So that runs from Hillsgrove to Forest Grove. It's 6 miles. It's a great trail opportunity. The railroad has since pulled the rails and the ties up, and so we are ready to move into the next phase of that. It does take time to do that. We have a trestle and a bridge that we have to deal with. And the good news is most of that money has already been raised, and so we're moving ahead. That's going to take a little bit longer, and it's not going to be open until 2028. But if you would walk out there, and certainly Rob knows this, if you go out there, you would see this is a beautiful wide right-of-way. And we're holding it kind of in the back pocket for TriMet to someday possibly be able to extend light rail from Hillsborough to Forest Grove. That's going to take a lot of money. We'll leave that at the TriMet for facilitating that. But for right now, we're going to have a great 6-mile hike that you can go from Hillsborough to Forest Grove. I've done 3 miles of it, and it is it's very cool to do that. So we look forward to that opening up in 28. And then the other, of course, is the Salmonberry Trail. The Salmonberry Trail is, again, a rail to trail to rail. There's a difference of why I say that. That goes basically from Banks to Tillamook, and it goes up over the Coast Mountain. It is 88 miles. It is divided into 4 sections, and the Washington County section is about 27 miles that we have available to us. We're working on, and again, the rail, we have had several of the miles of rail pulled up between Banks and Stub Stewart Park. We are working on funding on how we can open that trail up in the next couple of years, or at least 7 miles. And if you remember, that is a portion of that runs parallel to the Banks-Vernonia Trail. Banks-Vernonia Trail is a very popular trail. It's heavily used. And so this will provide a little bit of a different route, but at the same time, a little bit of a release on all of the traffic that is on Banks-Vernonia. Once it gets to Stub Stewart, though, it splits off and heads up over the Coast Mountains, where, of course, Banks-Vernonia continues on into Vernonia. So we're looking forward to finding some money to officially open up that trail and make it usable for all the people that love to walk and ride on trails. So we're looking forward to that. So with that, we have a number of other things that we're working on at the county, but it's just like you. September's back, summer's over, we missed it, but it's time to get back to work. So that's what we're working on. So I would certainly entertain any questions that you may have about anything the county's doing.
I do, but I'm gonna ask Counselor Smith, Counselor Martinez, and Counselor Papin, who are online. I'm gonna ask them first. Unmute yourself, Counselor Smith.
Yeah, I have no questions at this time.
Okay. Counselor Martinez or Counselor Papin?
I don't either. Just thank you for coming. Always love to hear your updates that you have for us. So pleasure seeing you.
Good. Counselor Page.
These zero budget updates, they happen and it's kind of interesting to figure out where the money's gonna come from, right? We get to, is there some kind of evaluation for each department head to talk about, or how does that work?
Well, last year, we had, all the departments had to put together a budget that was 3 to 5% reduction. The year before that, it was 5, 7, and 9% reductions. So we are, there's not much meat left on the bone for those, but yes, each department must put together a budget with reductions. We are looking at priority of services, quite frankly, to know what we should be providing, what we have to be providing, and what maybe we will have to reduce the services available. That's going to be a hard decision. We're going to be doing that in the next budget cycle, which will start in February of next year. And so, yes, all the departments have to participate in the reduction of money available.
Thanks.
The question I had was, can you give us an update on the jail and what's happening at the jail?
Well, as you know, there are a number of positions that are vacant at the jail, both in the jail and on the deputy side of things, which is basically our patrol. We are working hard on filling those positions. We do have money available for those positions when we can fill them, and we are hopeful that within the next couple of years, we can fill those positions. Once we bring someone on who has agreed to, work in the public safety environment, it takes about a year to get them through training and education to take that position. So it's a long road to fill those positions, but we're working very hard of getting that done. The jail also has some significant capital problems with it. So we are working on using ARPA dollars to backfill some of that, and it's about that number keeps moving because of construction costs, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million. We also are looking about 5 years out that we'd like to do a jail expansion because our jail is significantly small compared to Multnomah County and compared to our population. So we've got some real challenges in our public safety, but we're also very committed to providing money for those projects and making sure that we are providing a very safe environment in our county. Our surveys have told us that public safety is the #1 concern. And considered comparative, I guess, to counties around us, we are a very safe county, and we intend to continue and maintain that environment.
Thanks. Counselor Sheldon?
I have 2 questions. First one is, how about anything to do with a courthouse down the road? In the justice system, I know we've got a lot of holes and gaps there that we need to fill. I was kind of curious at what point down the line that is going to be looked at. So that's question 1, if you want to take that.
I will. We are in the process of that, Russ. And that's a long-term and very expensive process. So we have to get in the queue at the state. We hadn't done that up until last year. And we got passed on last year. We've asked for a considerable amount of money from the state to do the planning on this, and we're hopeful that we'll get that across the finish line this year, this 25 session. And it will be probably 5 years before we can begin to move in that direction. Like I said, it's a very expensive proposal. We'll need federal funding. We'll need funding from a lot of sources because we're probably talking $1 billion.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
The other question I have is related to EMS and the change in the transport agency. And I haven't really seen any negative press. I'm not sure I've seen a lot of press or anything much about how the performance, response times, and some of those things are going. I presume it's okay. We see those folks posted up out here often, and I know they run system status management, but I'm just kind of curious from a county perspective, you know, there was a need to address a concern. Has it been addressed?
Yes. We, in the process of the last couple of years, we have expanded the services that are available from our ambulance service. One is advanced, so that is where someone is critically injured or a heart attack where they need really advanced medical services when the ambulance shows up. The other is a lower tiered one, and we did that because quite frankly, they are having the same issues with employment as everyone else is. They are understaffed, and so we have been working with them on backup systems. Metro West is now the backup system to our ambulance services. AMR is our primary. We're still not meeting our response times as we like, but we continue to work with AMR to make sure that we're doing the best we can, and we're providing them with opportunity to do the same. So we're not meeting our criteria right now, but we're working on that.
Very good, thank you.
Bill and Rob, any questions or comments for? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner, I'm not sure I'll see you again in my temporary position and you're leaving office. And I've worked with you, I don't know how many decades, as your service to City of Hillsborough, elected post there, Washington County, and overall just your service to community. You had an accounting business that I know you did pro bono work for significant agencies over time. And I look at your service and thank you for Council Creek Trail support, which was on life support at one point, but during my service to to Cornelius, that has become a reality, and Salmonberry Trail also, and I've walked significant portions of that over the years. And, you've been a steady Eddie for sure with your public service. And I want to personally thank you. You've always been there. You've been responsible, accountable, and you've always watched spending. So I don't know what else I could say nice about you, but thank you, and I've appreciated watching your support for the whole county.
Yeah, so thank you, Rob. I've enjoyed it, and we've been here 40 years, and it's been a good trail, certainly, that we've been on, and it's always fun and certainly rewarding to be able to participate. So that's why I'm still in office. But you're correct. I have a couple of years to go, and then I think finally I will enjoy my third attempt at retirement. And you know, you said you kind of misspoke there for a minute. You said North Plains, and it really was Cornelius. So you know that we also gave the ribbon cutting for Los Amigos, which is a affordable housing project in Cornelius. We had 2 of those events last week. And so I was speaking at that, and Mayor DeLand was sitting in front of me, and I said, congratulations, the City of Hillsborough. everybody did exactly what you did. They went, ooh, Freudian slip. And so then I had to correct myself and say, but so yes, we have our hands in a variety of different pots there. Rob, thank you very much for your kind words.
I will echo what Rob said and really appreciate your support here in North Plains and beyond, and especially with Colpack. And I know that you're looking out after all of us, so I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. I try to do exactly that. So thank you.
Good, good.
Okay.
Anyone else? Comments? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mayor, if you don't mind. Matt Craigie, who was the county's economic development staff person, was a wonderful partner to the city of North Plains and Banks, I might add. I mean, he really carried out the mission of working with smaller cities. We're sad to see him go, but we hope that somebody kind of rises to the front of being able to work with us at the county in his replacement.
Thank you very much, Bill. We are in the process right now of looking for his replacement. You're exactly correct. And just to remind you, in 2019, when I first came in as county commissioner, that's the first position that I asked. We did not have at the county an economic development director. We put that position into place. Matt's been a great first economic development person. We're going to be looking forward to finding somebody of his caliber, certainly to continue our economic development focus at the county.
Thank you, sir.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, good. Good report. All right, staff night. So first up is Robin.
Good evening, Mayor Lanahan and councilors. I have a few updates to my report, and one is that we have a date for the work session on the WCCLS spending and governance, the presentation of our current state. It's set for October 22nd. I don't have the exact time of that work session, but I will certainly be attending. I believe it's in the afternoon. And I just wanted to give a couple updates to my report and add that putting additional resources towards outreach and student support, as everything I've been hearing is really, I can tell that we're putting our resources in the right place. I think we're really having an impact already. This evening, our early literacy specialist is at Quality Ridge at a kindergarten and first grade play date program that they had, and then next Monday for second and third graders. And our new community engagement specialist has met with Washway, the owner of Melly's, over the weekend on Saturday, and we'll be partnering with them on a trivia night, a monthly trivia night. It's very exciting. So those are just a few little updates since I wrote the report. And I also want to point out that some of what Commissioner Willie was saying about the broadband, bringing broadband to the rural communities, this digital partnership or digital navigator that I reference in my report there in our featured programs, that is, it's part of that initiative. It's part of that economic development work in the county. This is provided to us free of charge. Every other Tuesday, we'll have the AmeriCorps and Washington County Partnership Digital Navigator to assist community members helping find subsidized internet, learning to use the internet, navigate those types of things. So that is in addition to our tech help that we continue to have also, where community members can make an appointment and come in for help. So just a lot of great things going on this fall at the library. Does anyone have any questions?
No, I just had circled the new digital navigator in-person assistance, like really what can they help with? So should folks bring in their laptops or pads or phones or whatever and
Yes, they can for either tech help or the digital navigator. They can bring in their own devices. They'll have devices. We have our public computers in the library also. So it's really driven by whatever the person needs, but also will be able to inform them of ways they could get internet if they don't have it. There's like options out there that people don't always know about.
That's great. That's wonderful.
It's really great work.
Any counselors online have questions or comments for Robin? Nope, nope. And I don't see Counselor Martinez. Guess not. Anyone here? Nope. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Robin. Next up is Chief Jones.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Not much to add outside of my staff report that was sent out in the agenda. This is our August numbers. We had 229 calls for service in the month of August. A little bit down, but kind of account for that is Deputy Barters and Deputy Schutz both had vacations that kind of spanned over the course of the month. So we had some fill-in deputies that aren't as familiar with kind of operations here in North Plains. So although filling the seat, they weren't necessarily as active as our normal crew is. So I think that's a good, probably a good recollection of kind of where, or reason, sorry, why the numbers are a little low for August. But overall, nothing real remarkable to report during the month of August as far as calls go. A couple highlights for us for the month, obviously, was the Garlic Festival early on. That was obviously my first Garlic Festival working here. We did a nice debrief afterwards with some takeaways and lessons learned, but overall a relatively successful and safe event as far as we were concerned. We had anywhere from 3 to 4 deputies on during all hours of the festival, not to include the overnight security that's kind of per protocol, just for the vendor's sake here on site. We did have to utilize a different mobile command vehicle just because the Lee Falls fire was going on at the same time. So it was a bit of, kind of a bit stretched for resources, but we were able to still get out a mobile command vehicle for our use for the weekend, which is super helpful for the deputies that are out here for the duration of the event. The other thing that I think the most positive note from August was receiving the grant from ODOT for high visibility traffic enforcement for fiscal year 24-25. It was a tune of about $9,500 that we get to spend in overtime money that's fully refundable from the state ODOT funds to help us enforce distracted driving, some targeted DUI enforcement, distracted driving, cell phone specifically, speed enforcement, and pedestrian safety. So to my knowledge, as far as I could tell, North Plains has not received that ODOT award before for the grant funds. So this will be our first time using that. So that'll be nice to have to kind of bolster some traffic enforcement over the next year. I did include a calls for service map for July and August since we didn't meet for staff reports in August. I threw that on there for you all to look at, specifically for July and August, just again targeting property crimes and traffic crash related calls for service. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
For the $9,500 for that, how many hours is that? I mean, there's a planning, like, okay, you're gonna plan from here to there. Is that on the clock for as far as the money goes, or just as officers there at a time? How much time are we looking at for $9,500?
It all depends on
Weekend or?
Well, it's we can, the way the grant works, we have so many dollars per mission. So we have so much money to spend towards DUI enforcement, so much towards speed enforcement and pedestrian enforcement. So we're given an allocation of funds per each mission, and we run those missions throughout the year. And ODOT picks certain campaign times that they want us to focus on this or focus on that. And so that's what we'll do. Outside of time of day and days of the week, that's totally up to us, how we, when we want to utilize that. But we have certain pools of money for certain enforcements.
So 95 divided by 3, so they're looking at $3,700 of that, like 1 day of.
It also, they take into account, we have to file with ODOT what the hourly overtime rate is per deputy working the missions. And so it'll vary depending on the deputy who's working the mission, but we have, that's all in there. We do these online submissions of their hours, and it tracks it for us, how much money we spent on each deputy during certain hours. So it's all tracked through ODOT, like an online database. they have that information.
Yeah, sure. Any counselors online have questions or comments for Chief Jones? Just raise your hand if you do. Counselor Papen.
Thank you. Chief Jones, I just wanted to know if you had an update with Washington County regarding the speed reduction on West Union Road to 35 miles an hour.
I think Dustin will probably have the most up-to-date information on that, but last I knew that was getting blessed fairly soon. I don't have a timeline, Dustin might, but I believe it was gonna be reduced to 40 was the number I saw, from 45 to 40. Yeah, but it should be relatively soon when that's gonna be happening.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Kendall, go ahead.
I'm looking at the crashes on your little map here. Are those just minor crashes or the two of them are focal, Gunco and then right here at McDonald's?
Yeah.
Are those just minors?
Yeah, those, the only one that I know of the 5 that are indicated on the map for July and August, we only had one injury crash, and that was over on Gordon Road. It was a single vehicle motorcycle, minor injuries, nothing significant. But yeah, the intersection there by the McDonald's, it's quite troublesome for people getting in and out of there. It gets kind of busy, and so it's kind of a common hotspot for us for crashes.
Thank you.
Counselor Sheldon?
Got nothing.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Dustin. And just so everyone is aware, Dustin has recently been married. He got married recently, so congratulations. I told him I was gonna embarrass him just a little bit, so.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for that introduction. But yes, I am very happily married right now, so I'm going to be enjoying for a long while. I don't have anything much to report in addition to what I had given you. The only thing that kind of slipped my mind was that September 1st was the date that the city took over Sunset Ridge West Park in Sunset Ridge. And so right now we have a contractor that is continuing to do the maintenance for that as well. And I'm working with trying to get the back end of getting like the county records, basically to show that it is now property of city of North Plains as opposed to the HOA. So working on that in addition to the report that I had provided. Is there any questions that any of you may have?
I had one question about the Jesse Mays perimeter. Regarding the 309, 311 improvements, it's 90% design. And you're saying you're waiting on the railroad review and approval. I know it from experience, you know, waiting on the railroad could be a really super long time. Just kind of curious, where are they in the process? Like, what's that timeline look for us in getting a response back from them?
Well, my experience with the railroad, working in Kansas with BNSF, it could be anywhere between 12 and 24 months. And this was something that I brought to the attention of 3J when this project started, that we might get hung up by the railroad, even though everything seemed to be going by quickly in the very beginning. But the railroad has to give it to their own engineers and everything to approve. And it's basically a time suck with the railroad's engineers, contracted engineers, and we're waiting on them more than anything. And that is a vital piece of that project because there's a lot of stormwater that goes south and downhill, and we have to work around that railroad. And there's pieces where we have to remove the railroad, and there's a lot of coordination that goes in with that. And we can't continue the rest of the project without that piece. And so we were hoping to start this year, but that's not going to be the case. And I would be lucky to start after Garlic Festival next year. And there could be other things that go along with it, but I'm not surprised that it's delayed.
So the work around Jesse Mays perimeter really could be another year to 2 years.
It's very possible. And one of the things that we were talking about with the small city allotment grant reward, we were going to use that for that particular project, but because we do not know when the timeline, we ended up actually using one of our Hillcrest overlay, and I mentioned that in my report. And because that Hillcrest overlay project is going to be about a little bit more than the amount of the small city allotment, it kind of fit in. At least we have a project that we can use those funds that are available to at least.
Okay, there was some conversation about the trees along Wasco, and I don't know if could you speak about that? Like some of those trees were identified as just being older and possibly taken out. Now, would that be something that could happen before this project begins or in conjunction with the perimeter project?
There's been a couple of the trees that have actually been taken down because they are unsafe. And there's a few more that need to be taken down, but we were waiting more or less for the full-fledged project to begin to get a good portion of those trees. And not all of the trees were slated to come down, but there were some that needed to come down to make way for the stormwater improvements. And it was just kind of a good time to take down those trees, but at the same time, we're going to replace those trees in the future with the project. So we're not basically, we're not getting rid of all the trees altogether.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sheldon?
Got 3 questions. So I think the first 2 are actually related, but that's basically the items that were on your punch list. What kind of time, now is that a punch list you're preparing for the contractor to finish, or that the contractor is preparing to finish?
Okay, so the punch list for the 313 projects
313th
and Commercial Street.
Commercial.
These are items that our engineer, our inspectors that we have contracted had found that needs to be completed before that the projects are basically substantially completed.
Right.
But there are little things that need to be finished, a few ADA ramps here and there, some landscaping, little bits and pieces that basically doesn't hinder the project from being more or less complete, but we'll keep it from being the retainage release to the contractor. And hopefully they will get that released soon. And that does not affect the small city allotment grant that we had that was due earlier this year. And we were able to finalize those grants. And we should be reimbursed here fairly soon. I don't know if we had received the reimbursements yet, but they should.
That was kind of where I was driving. I was concerned about, is there anything in jeopardy in there?
No, that is taken care of, and I've been working with the state about that. And one of the things that we were concerned originally about the small city allotment is they changed the rules to where we can't have multiple projects going and multiple funds basically open at the same time. We have to finish it within that same calendar year, which is another reason why the Hillcrest overlay, that's a job that can be done fairly quickly in a couple of months, and then we'll be able to get reimbursed right away, as opposed to waiting around for a project that we have no clue when we'll actually finish.
Okay, and the third question is related to a question I probably asked you months ago, because I was reviewing my notes earlier, and they're not in these notes, but I'm pretty sure that I asked about some sort of and I think you started putting this together, was basically a facilities maintenance type plan checklist. Because I know we're going to transition from fall into winter. And I was thinking that was in the works, but I just haven't heard any more about that in terms of how we look at and care for our facilities going into the different seasons.
When you're talking about the facilities, are you talking about our buildings?
Just structures.
Just the structures?
Yeah, structure, infrastructure, as far as buildings, reservoirs, sites, anything we own, not necessarily equipment. That's a different, that's a whole different sphere. I'm thinking more about facilities. Do we have gutters cleaned? Do we have painting that needs to be done? Do we have repairs made? Do we have caulking done? Those kinds of things is more along the lines as I'm not interested in the minutia. I just want to make sure we have a plan in place, because this city hasn't historically had a very good maintenance plan in place. And that's something I've been harping on for a while. So I just want to see that we get started on that, get some traction on that. That's all I'm after.
Okay, having a facilities maintenance plan is something that I've been working on with the crew. It's not a detailed, like getting into the minutia kind of plan, but it is something that we've been talking about. And we have our water system audit, and that part of that is looking at the facilities and the maintenance of the facilities that are critical to our infrastructure, our water infrastructure. And some of the things that we were talking about, like Javier is talking about maybe fixing some of these other, like our reservoir one pump station, and kind of fixing some of that areas, and even looking at some repairs like for fences and stuff like that. But that's not necessarily for the buildings itself, but we've got kind of a grand idea. We have a lot of things that we need to repair in addition to our leaf season pickup, and other things that are gonna be going on this fall as well.
Right, okay, I'm just interested to make sure that we have a plan and that we work that plan and that we add to that plan or take away from that plan when it needs it. I want to make sure we're planning and executing. That's all I'm really after. And it's been a while since I've asked about it. And I know that there's a fair amount of things going on here. So we have a new facility coming on soon. That'll need to be maintained. And so I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, are we looking in the 30,000 foot view at all of our facilities that we need to think about in terms of the rest we need to cover, the call, like I said, it's some of the small things, but it's things we need to be looking at as we move in certain periods in the year. That's all.
Councilor Page.
And you brought the, I was gonna say beavers, but you brought the leaves. And I was gonna talk about the beavers too. The days are getting longer because, I'm sorry, the days are getting shorter, but that's getting longer. So this is gonna cool off soon and the rains are gonna start happening. We have, every year, since we have a bunch of beavers that flood up Gordon Road.
Yes.
We do respond to the massive floods. Can we look at giving them while the weather's still nice, getting them cleared out? Because the rain's gonna start shortly. So that's gonna be flooding soon.
That is actually one of the things that is on my task list for the crew to take a look at. We haven't seen any beavers in the area recently, and Clean Water Services had actually put in a beaver deceiver, and hopefully that has helped a little bit. That's what they call it, a beaver deceiver. It's down by Pump Station 1. And they just basically put a little metal rail on one of the culverts. And supposedly that was going to alleviate some of the beaver problems, but we're going to anticipate more up by Jewett Cameron. And that's also something that we've been working closely with Jewett Cameron, and they have been in the past, pretty vigilant about letting us know, hey, we've seen them out here, they're working, and we will get out there as soon as we can.
And last year, your leaf cleanup was absolutely great. And that's the first year I see it like really on the nail. Thank you for that. For leaves.
Any counselors online? Questions, comments for Dustin? Okay.
I'll just hop in here, Dustin, just really quick. Do you have any visibility or an update to the speed reduction that Chief Jones had mentioned earlier?
The last information that I got was that the county is not going to reduce the speed to 35 miles an hour, but they're going to reduce it to 40 miles an hour. And they did not give me a timeline of when that happened or when that is going to happen, but it's going to happen soon. That's pretty much all the information that I have at the moment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then I think just my other question, just thinking about the Sunset Ridge West Park. I know currently it's pretty heavily irrigated by the HOA. Is that something that the city is continuing and planning for the irrigation for that park, or will it be reduced?
That is a very good question. And I was looking at the numbers before this meeting because I had a feeling it was going to come up. The irrigation does need to be adjusted now that we are taking it over, because it's about equivalent of about $7,000 a year just in water alone that the HOA was spending on irrigation. And the actual maintenance was probably about another $1,000 a month. And so all those costs add up, and we're gonna work with an irrigation and maintenance schedule that will kind of bring down those costs.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Thank you, Dustin. Next up, Steve. That's your.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I have a brief staff report for you this month. Some of the stuff you've seen a little bit already in the Friday Five, so I'm just kind of getting into a little more detail and here to answer any questions you may have on some of this. The first item is the Greenlight Development. We have heard from them recently, and they've informed us that they anticipate submitting an application tomorrow for the 2-acre parcel out in Brentville. I don't know a whole lot about their proposal. We've had a lot of discussions back and forth on many different things, but I do believe there will be a small component of mixed use added into the project. You know, in terms of how much, again, I'm not sure until we see the proposal, but it does sound like they are going to include something as part of it. So that was encouraging to hear. That really came as a result of our conversations on the master plan approval and the phase 1 development agreement. That kind of drove that conversation, and they realized that that was a binding document that required them to do this, and it superseded some of the other laws that they were trying to operate under. So that was encouraging to hear that they agreed with our city council that that was applicable and that they are trying to address that. So looking forward to seeing what they bring in, and if they do bring it in this week or any time in the next 7 to 10 days, we anticipate that we will have this before the Planning Commission in November. One unfortunate update I need to bring to your attention is when we did the sign code update, there appears to be an oversight on the IPU zone. And I apologize for that, but one thing that we would like to do with the new Public Works facility is put in a ground mounted sign for that facility. And right now, a ground mounted sign is not an allowed sign in the IPU zone. We actually only allow a freestanding sign in that zone. And so as we started to kind of wrap our heads around this, we looked at all the IPU zone property in the city to see what kind of signs are there right now. And one thing we found is that we do have some ground mounted signs already in that zone. And so some of them are as new as the Afalati School. They have a ground mounted sign right in front there, about 5 feet from the sidewalk. And, you know, just for a freestanding sign, that requires a 10-foot setback. So something got missed there as well. So this will help correct some of those things that maybe got missed in the past. And it'll also provide the city an opportunity to put a ground mounted sign out at the new Public Works facility. So we wanted that. And again, I apologize for the oversight. The only thing I can really attest this to is the Public Works property is sandwiched between the M2 zone properties out there, and we were focused on the M2, and we just missed this one. So I do apologize for that, but we plan on bringing this back before the Planning Commission. We might need to have them do a special meeting in October so we can just move this along. One of the concerns is getting it done in a timely manner so we can get the foundation poured for a ground mounted sign out there before the weather becomes adverse. So we might have to work with our partners on that a little bit to see how to get that done. But that is really the urgency of this matter right now, is to get this updated as quickly as possible. And, you know, let's get the sign built and get the new facility open and ready for business. One thing that when I came on board here that was kind of new to me is addressing. When I was at the Deschutes County in the city of Bend, the way that area handled their addressing was they had an address coordinator at the county, and they had an addressing for everything in Deschutes County. And so whether you did a subdivision in Sisters or Redmond or Bend, when you needed to get addressing, you went to the county address coordinator, and he assigned addresses for all the new lots. In Washington County, it doesn't work that way. Each local jurisdiction does their own addressing and just sends that out, kind of broadcasts it to the county, the emergency services, and then the public service providers that we have, like Garbarino and PGE and the school district and whatnot. So it was a little bit different. And I remember sitting down with Andy and doing phase 3 of Bryn Hill, and he's like, this is still new to me, you know, and I wish there was training on this, because, you know, this is not really easy stuff. It takes a little bit to understand how to do it and then to get it right. And so we started reaching out to the county to see if they could assist us with a little training, and we really never got any feedback from them. They didn't answer any of our requests for assistance. So we reached out to Cornelius and the city of Banks, and we were really gracious that the city of Cornelius stepped up and invited Roan and I over there for a morning session with them to kind of go through how they do it, how they coordinate with the county, how they reach out to the other folks to let them know about the new addresses. And I just can't thank them enough for doing that. It really shed a lot of light on where we were having some deficiencies, and it really helped us better understand really what the county is looking for. We just kind of piggybacking on that, we haven't had a lot of new building permit applications coming in Bryn Hill because they had not recorded phase 5. They actually have pulled all the building permits for phases 1 through 4 and are working on those houses in various stages, but they weren't moving yet on phase 5. Phase 5 just got recorded, and we just did our first addressing based on our training with Cornelius, and it went very smoothly. So I think, you know, thank you to Cornelius, and I think we now have a better understanding of how this whole process works. So hopefully there'll be less confusion in the future with this. And this one other thing I want to bring to your attention, Space Age has been reaching out to us about their tanks in the ground. I understand that they have some problems with their tanks and they need to be replaced. And they tell us that this is kind of urgent. So we anticipate that you might not be receiving any gas tax from Space Age starting pretty soon, because they're going to do maintenance on those underground tanks. They're going to dig them up, take them out, replace them with new tanks. And we've been told that that process is going to happen sooner than later. So I just wanted to put it on your radar in case you start seeing equipment over there. It's a maintenance project, so there's no land use review that's required for that. But they do need to get any necessary permits for erosion control and other things from the county and CWS. So I'm anticipating they're kind of working through that process right now and should be breaking ground on digging those tanks up and putting the new ones in and then paving it back over. They do have plans for a bigger project out there to add some more pumps to that site, but they seem to be stuck right now with Clean Water Services on addressing the stormwater for the new canopies that would cover those pumps. So not quite sure where that sits with them, but it's been an ongoing issue that they've been working on this whole year so far to try and get that resolved. But just want to let you know that the tanks are going to start coming out of ground soon. And that's all I have for you right now.
Any questions or comments for Steve?
The type 3 design review, how does that work?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Type 3 design review, what is the process of that?
I'm just having a
Green
hard.
Light Development has a first step that we submitted a type 3 design.
Type 3,
review
yes,
application.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you there.
So how does that work?
The type 3 is just like, you know, you've seen them before, you know, they come in as a type 3 land use application that requires a public hearing before the planning commission. And so once that comes in, we will start our 30-day completeness review and make sure that the application has all the necessary components that we look for in a land use application. If it does, we will deem it complete. That kind of kicks off the 120-day review process. So once we deem that complete, we'll start mailing out the notices to folks within 250 feet of the subject property to let them know that we have the application and that they can provide comments at that time. And then we'll be writing a staff report and proceeding to a public hearing before the planning commission. The planning commission will hold that hearing and render a decision at that point. If somebody chooses to appeal that decision, it would come before the city council. And then the city council would hold hearings on that appeal and render their decision on the appeal. And at that time, we effectively have completed our process and we have a final decision now. And if somebody would like to appeal that decision, similar to what happened with the recent dispensary, they would have to appeal that to LUBA. Now, I've not heard from the dispensary if they're appealing to LUBA yet, but that time is running out. This is the last week they have on the 21-day period to file that appeal. And I believe it ends on Thursday for that particular application. But that is the same process that we went through. The dispensary is going to be the same process that Greenlight would go through for their development proposal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any counselors online have questions or comments for Steve?
I got one more for Dustin. I totally forgot about it, and I just thought of the lights. The front, the City of North Plains, great sign, has no lights on it, so at night you can't see it. How do you get lights on
We're talking about the one that's at the very,
Yeah,
the brand new one,
that?
or?
Yeah, the brand new.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the one that was up by, not
I
Hillcrest.
thought about the new one that Rowan just up.
The downtown sign. Okay, there are lights on there, but as far as not working at night, that is a new,
Okay, because
development.
somebody asked me about that, and I drove past and seen lights, I'm like, ah, there you go. I totally spaced it.
It could be a timing thing, it's on solar. And
So far, lights above it.
we'll have to take a look at it. Thank you.
Right, thanks.
I do have one question, and maybe you can give us an update about the east end of North Avenue.
East and the north.
Yeah, so between Glencoe Road and 309th, I guess there were some franchise utility issues. I don't think this is anything that is like we're in charge of, but I'm just kind of curious where that is as far as the timing and the production, because it's pretty much just stopped between that particular section of North Avenue. And I thought maybe you could give us an update on that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think when we do our staff reports, we need to add engineering on here, because that's really where that update would come from. As you know, planning is kind of on the front end of all this. And so the only update I have is the same update that you were provided by Brian Feeney, which is it is the franchise utilities that need to move their stuff right now. And they have their own set of contractors that do their work. And so we're kind of on their schedule to get this done. And I think, you know, it's a good question to bring to Brian's attention about how can we move that along as we're winding down construction season. We got a lot of work still to be done over there. I'm not sure if Dustin might have more of an update for you, but it's really not something that I'm directly tied to on a daily basis. It's really Brian and probably Public Works that are more in the know about where that is than myself.
Okay, thank you. Justin.
The only update I can give you is traditionally for capital improvement projects, we have a little bit more pull to be able to get those utilities done in a timely manner. But because this is a developer-driven project, it has a little bit different rules, and we cannot force them to speed up as much as we could on a capital improvement project, if that makes any sense.
It does. So it's in their court.
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. And do they provide you with any type of updates along this process, or it's just whenever we make a phone call or an inquiry?
They do not give us a specific date, but there are kind of ranges, and it could be anywhere between 30 and 60 days. And I don't know when the last time they had worked on that specific area, but it could be delayed probably for another month or so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Finance. Hello, Bill.
Hello there. I really don't have a ton to add to the report that you all got last week, but I would just highlight a few things. For the most part, you didn't, because of the way the month worked last month and the second normal meeting not happening, there wasn't a staff report meeting for that month. So the report that you got last week represents a couple of months of additional information. So if you have any questions about July or August, feel free to ask. For the most part, our operating funds, general fund, water, streets, and Jesse Mays over the last 2 months have really operated, generally speaking, about the same as they have been, at or below a bit overall budget for all the main budget categories. To date, really the only supplemental budget it's looking like is a virtual certainty is going to be the expense item I've mentioned a few times over the months, because no surprises here. But you all back prior to even the FY 24-25 biennial budget, you all determined that speed radar safety signs were a priority for ARPA funds. And so gave the policy authorization for those to be purchased. But in doing the 2-year budget, I forgot to add that amount line item into the public safety capital facilities budget. And so on your chart on the very first page, it looks like the capital equipment or expenditures number is way out over budget, and that's why. That number for those purchases using ARPA funds should have been in there on that chart, and I just didn't get the detail in there. So it's not spending above and beyond what you authorized. It's spending you authorized. I just didn't get the number in, and it's over that 5% amount. So we aren't under any obligation to do a supplemental immediately. But the next one with near certainty will have that in there, those signs, the expense of those signs. Other than that, we don't have any categories of expenditure in the general fund, and certainly none of the other operating funds that are over material. We're a growing city, so we do have some materials and services expenditures that are on pace to potentially push out over budget. And if they're looking like they're going to go out over 5% and kind of trigger supplemental budget, then we'll talk about that and bring that to you. But when things look like they're going to, we typically, I'll share with you in the report, these are the areas we're watching because spending is on pace to, by the end of the biennium, we might have some things going over. So, but I do brief you on that in the report. Let's see, anything about the operating funds. Water revenue is close to 100% of budget now. So by the end of September, water usage should have the fund over 100%. Seasonally, of course, water usage is higher in the summer. So very high cyclical spikes for water fund revenue. As far as just kind of general finance topics, Kristen Gearhart started today as our accountant. She comes from us, as the report says, she comes from us from the Metropolitan Area Communications Commission. She was the finance manager there. That's the agency that really oversees the franchise agreements for Comcast and Ziply for the most part, broadband related services, the private utility. So she comes to us after 7 years there, most recently as the finance manager, and very well versed in a wide variety of things that we have to do here. And brings with her some skills the city hasn't even had yet before, really. So we're very excited about that. And there's a lot of things we can do. We typically don't get to on time every way, the way we want. We have a lot of partner agencies that work with us in other small cities because we're not alone in that. But she has the ability to get us up to speed on a lot of things that we have to depend on our partner agencies sometimes. So that's wonderful. So she started today and we're very excited to have her. The other big thing really is just the books have been closed on FY24 property tax revenue. And because of all the homes being added in Brent Hill, basically, we're at roughly $100,000 in property tax revenue above what we expected, or over last year has come in. So the amount of property tax revenue that came in this year from the new home construction is about, I believe it was 10 or 12% over what we expected for the first year of the biennium. So moving into new budget season in the coming year, and before then, we've already begun discussion about how to kind of plan for expanding some services, given that these are new households paying property taxes, and that those are revenues to fund different services that they're here for now. So we'll be working with at a staff level and working with you all on how do we scale up appropriately within the revenues that are coming in. But we have new households that love the library and like having police services. And so, this all the new money that comes in terms of property tax revenue from these new homes, that's not revenue that gets taken and helps make up for what we're not doing for existing residents. That's money to try to help pay for services for them, this new service demand. So we'll be working with you all to help to kind of figure that out from a fiscal standpoint. now that we kind of have some final numbers. So, other than that, any questions?
Council? Any counselors online? Questions for Bill? Nope. Nope. All right, hearing that.
Well,
Counselor Sheldon?
I always have a question.
That's okay.
I might have seen this, maybe it was in an email. Maybe I was copied on an email, but it could be Friday 5. But I was thinking was there some growing numbers of aging in our water bill? Or is that old?
No, we had.
And I'm just kind of wondering, okay, well, what's the cost associated with addressing that? Maybe not directly, but is that HOAs? Is it homeowners?
Great question, Councilor Sheldon. So what's been happening is, it's a variety of different things. There has been a bit of a bump in the number of households that have gotten behind on paying their water bill. The single biggest portion of it actually are individual households who are new to the community, and geographically speaking, they seem to be households who have moved into the Bryn Hill development recently, and they don't, just not living there for very long, they don't have a full handle on how much their watering settings are actually putting out in terms, or spraying in terms of water for their lawn or what have you. The nice thing about being a small town is that, and again, I've mentioned Bailey before, and customer service skills, and working with customers in the water department, but she calls and talks to everybody. And that's what it ends up being. It's like, we'll go over the water billing for any errors. There's been a bump in water bills for these households. We contact them. You have a high water bill. Are you just kind of talk to them about it? And the most common answer is they just don't have a handle on the settings.
Okay.
And so we work with them, but we do go back and we look at historical usage. And is this, so that's pretty much what it is. And it's kind of had some people kind of get behind because they've had some higher water bills. So that's the most common answer to that.
All right, I know we kind of had a handle on it, and it seems like I saw that it was creeping back, so that's
the most common.
Okay.
Yeah, but we did have a bump, yeah.
All right, super, thanks.
Thank you, Bill. All right. All right, on to new business, 10A, the FEMA PICM presentation. And so I think this one is Ron's.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Thank you, Bill.
Next one. There you go.
Okay, a few notes before we begin. This FEMA pre-implementation compliance measures program is complex, detailed, and dealing with a lot of federal policy and rulemaking. And for those reasons, we do have our attorney, Ashley Dugal, online. If you have questions that are going to delve into the legal realm or to do with policy, making it the FEMA level, Ashley will be a great person at the end of this presentation to refer back to. The second thing is a note on the staff report that you were provided. At the end, I did include a request for council to consider a decision on a pre-implementation compliance measure. I will shorten that now to pick them for brevity's sake at the next city council meeting. Staff have decided to extend our timeline and our requests of you. We're going to be scheduling a work session on this topic. We really don't believe that 2 weeks' time and 2 presentations is going to be enough for you guys to make a truly educated decision on the topic. So we're going to be extending the timeline and giving you guys more opportunities to consider this, to ask us questions, to ask the legal team questions, and make sure you're fully aware of what decision you're going to be making. With that, I will introduce you to the FEMA National Flood Insurance Program Endangered Species Act Integration Pre-Implementation Compliance Measures Program. Slide, please. A brief overview of NFIP and the ESA. NFIP provides flood insurance, but they also help with regulatory floodplain standards, both at the federal level and helping local jurisdictions to develop their standards. The Endangered Species Act, managed by NOAA and USFS, WS, additionally with the National Marine Fisheries Service, is the agency, is the act, and then the implementation there is responsible for protection of threatened and endangered species across the country. NFIP is responsible for a lot of sensitive habitat, wetlands, riparian zones, coastal zones. And because of that, they are going to be responsible for consulting with the services, NOAA and USFWS, and considering the impacts that any action, funding, or authorization that they put out there is going to have on those endangered species. Slide, please. So a history here on why we got to the point of pre-implementation compliance. In 2009, a lawsuit was brought by Portland Audubon Society against FEMA and the NFIP for failure to consult and consider the ESA. That was settled outside court with the agreement that FEMA would consult with NMFS on how they can integrate the ESA into their operations in Oregon and create a program that was going to not jeopardize the existence of endangered and threatened species in Oregon. In 2016, NMFS finally rendered their decision in the form of a biological opinion, or a BIOP. Inside of that BIOP was the opinion that NFIP, as it operated, was jeopardizing the existence of 16 fish species and southern resident killer whales. Later in the BIOP, you'll see a RPA, a reasonable and prudent alternative. This was NMFS's alternative plan for NFIP to implement their program in Oregon without jeopardizing those species. And that is the plan that is currently being implemented. Slide, please. This shows the affected area in the BIOP. It mentions the 16 species plus the southern resident whales. Those are all dependent on the Columbia River and its feeding into the Pacific Ocean, which means that in Oregon, any tributary to the Columbia is subject to this biological opinion. Everything from, say, the Willamette River to the Tualatin to McKay Creek here in town. All of those waters flow into Columbia at some point, and so we are subject to this biological opinion for those species. Slide, please. So where are we at now? FEMA is required to implement these new rules for operating NFIP. They have been working on this since 2016, faced several delays, and are now under quite a bit of pressure from outside environmental groups to get these get these alternatives in place. And they have chosen to, instead of implementing at the federal level and changing their rules at this junction, they are requiring local jurisdictions to choose a path forward that is compliant with the RPA. And that is what we call element 2, the interim measures. FEMA has now rebranded that to the pre-implementation compliance measures, the PICMs that I talk about. They have set a deadline of December 1st for a communication from local jurisdictions on which measure the local jurisdiction will go forward with, and a final implementation date of July 31st of next year. Slide, please. So these are the options that FEMA has provided us with. They boil down to prohibition, model code, or a permit by permit process. To provide a little bit of detail without getting too pedantic, the prohibition option would prohibit all new development in the floodplain
This would take the form of either outright prohibition or a moratorium with a set end date. FEMA cannot do this as a federal level measure. They are not allowed to do an outright prohibition on any of our lands. We can take that. This is not an option for them. This would be a uniquely local solution. It's a drastic option, and it's one that would attract a lot of attention and would be the most change from our current operations. It would have the most impact by far. The model code is incorporating a model ordinance that would be developed by FEMA. You received a copy of that model ordinance with the materials for the staff report. This is a more comprehensive look at the program and a longer term solution. We would take the model code and consider which elements need to be incorporated into our code, which are currently present in our code. Working with both the legal team and planning as well as other planners in the area. There's a lot of jurisdictions that are interested in this, and FEMA has also expressed that they may be taking feedback on what they've provided us at this point. This is a option that would be a big push upfront. It's type 4 text amendment and quite a large one at that. So staff would be considerably burdened by it upfront, but it would become an easy to manage program in the long term. We're talking several years before we expect any change. FEMA has, of course, this is a draft program right now. They're expecting finalization, finishing out their NEPA review around 2027. So if we implement this code now, we have at least a few years of operating under one system, no changes, very consistent and easy to implement for each case that comes in. It's just like any other application, no special requirements other than following the code language. The permit by permit option requires applicants to provide an additional document with their floodplain permit application. That's the floodplain habitat assessment. FEMA, I've also provided you with what FEMA provided us for the habitat assessment guide. It's another dense document outlining what the requirements for putting together a habitat assessment are, which would require applicants to contract with a biological environmental expert to put together this report. They would be required to submit that with their application, and staff would need to analyze that report, likely needing additional expertise than what we have on staff right now. There has been conversations with Washington County, considering the number of jurisdictions affected by this, about pooling resources to hire a consultant with biological environmental expertise to review these if jurisdictions choose to go with the permit by permit route. But it is a long-term investment. Every time a floodplain permit comes in, we will need to seek out that expertise to analyze that report. So it's a continual project and requires management for the life of however long the permit by permit process goes on, which, as I mentioned, FEMA is expecting to finalize their rules around 2027. So we would hope that at that point, this would be able to be phased out and applicants would just comply with the stated rules. We could get slide. So this is just a little bit about our opinion. Staff talked a lot with our legal team and believe that the model code is going to be the most effective in terms of cost, in terms of long time management, and public opinion, making this as user-friendly of a system as possible. Floodplain development is already a complicated process. We don't want to add undue burden. And this would be something that we can make our own. FEMA is not expecting a word for word verbatim adoption of this model code. But as long as we believe, as long as our intentions are in line with the intentions of FEMA, we can incorporate this code effectively into our existing code. We are really leaning against the prohibition pick'em option due to the complications of issuing a moratorium, the really severe effect on property value and the use of floodplain properties, as well as the permit by permit pick-up due to that continued maintenance and the coordination that we would need to every time have an application go to an outside consultant for expert analysis. Next slide, please. So looking forward, staff are going to be scheduling a joint work session with yourselves and the planning commission to go over some additional details. This has been sort of 30,000 feet, and I know this is a lot of information. This case has been going on for 15 years now. There's a lot of detail that we can get into, and there are details that could affect your decision. We want to have an open forum for you guys to really delve into those, as well as potential impacts on our expansion areas. We do have floodplain in current city limits, as well as floodplain directly outside of the current city limits. Anywhere that we would expand into, if the UGB expansion goes forward, would be impacted by floodplains. Additionally, no matter what pick-up option is chosen, there is going to be an effect on our developable lands within the city, as well as any properties that might undergo redevelopment. Those are going to be affected by this. So we really want to open up a venue where yourselves and the planning commission can ask us and ask the legal team all of those questions after you've had a little bit more. I know you've only had about 4 days with these documents, which are very dense, giving you some time to really think over those. And then our hard deadline, as I mentioned, is December 1st for a decision on the pick-up. We'll ask you to adopt a resolution verifying which pick-up option that you will proceed with, and we'll be looking for that probably sometime in November. Next slide, please. That's all of my information that I'm going to bestow upon you at this moment. Any questions?
Actually, Rowan, if I might, Lori let me know that viewers, even though the slide presentation was moving forward and it moved forward here, it seems at least one person could only see the first slide. So so viewers out there, I guess what we would say is, number one, this is a decision that will happen in some time. And so we will absolutely make this slide deck as a reference available.
Can I also put the slide deck in the chat so people can look at it at the convenience?
I have a note for you to send it to me, and I'll email it to the counselors that are online tomorrow morning. And then the other people, I don't know if you have a space on the city website where you're putting this stuff for FEMA?
I can definitely work on getting a page up.
Okay.
Where do you look at it in the chat? In the short term?
Well, she's done now, so.
We just drag it to the chat, drop it in.
I think it's a native file, not a shared file. That might be a complication, but other than the technical difficulties.
Well, and this way, I mean, when I email it, then it's public record that, the counselors received it, so. That's just easier.
And in the urgency for this, I think, I know that there has been some conversation at the Oregon Mayors Association. And there are several mayors across the state, a lot of coastal mayors in particular, who have really been watching this topic. And I'm just wondering if you could just give, I think you had a conversation with the mayor of Warrenton, Mayor Henry Ballensiefer. So could you just give a really brief, summary of that conversation that you had with the mayor?
With Mayor Ballensiefer. Yes. We had a conversation with him this morning. The coastal mayors are rightfully very concerned about this. The pick-up option, the expectation for the coastal cities is much higher, and they're much more burdened by floodplain than we are. They also have been following this for a lot longer time, naturally, and they've seen a lot of stumbles or fumbles from FEMA. There's been a lot of delays, there have been a lot of miscommunications from FEMA, and what we're hearing from Mayor Valensper is a lot of frustration with this and a lack of clarity. We also have struggled with a lack of clarity from FEMA. We've talked to other jurisdictions within Washington County and Washington County themselves. They've also struggled a lot with a lack of communication from FEMA. We have reached out to DLCD and struggled with a lack of communication from them as well. And I think that our conversation this morning centered around a lot of that frustration, as well as some more detailed or nuanced frustrations with the pick'em options and what were going to be the consequences of those options. Something Mayor Valensper expressed a lot of concern for was Measure 47 claims, which are taking claims that people who are impacted, or properties that are impacted by this could, their owners or developers could file for an application, be denied, and then make a Measure 47 takings claim. After speaking with our team, and Ashley, I think, can provide a lot more on the Measure 47 issue, but we are not as concerned about that. Ashley, do you want to jump in here on that?
Sure. Yes, thank you. And I'm also happy to answer any other questions that council or the mayor may have. But specifically about measures 37 and 49 takings claims, there's an exception for federally required laws. So in a situation like this, where you're just implementing a federal requirement, there's an exception, and there cannot be a measure 37 or measure 49 claim. Even if there was, I think the impact, if you were implementing the model ordinance rather than the pure restriction on development in the floodplain, the ability to bring a claim for limiting a property's value would be a lot more difficult. So luckily, that's not as much of an issue from my perspective.
And I think the interest in this is knowing that, you know, looking at future development down the road, that we do have floodplain on the east side along Mackay Creek. And I think it's just important to be able to take a look at this and see how, if this impacts us. So with the upcoming work session with so the planning commission is aware of this topic as well?
Yes, they were briefed on the topic last week.
Okay, and so we'll have a work session with them, and then we'll move forward and then be able to respond by the 1st of December. So
yes, we don't anticipate that there will be a time crunch.
Okay.
We're confident with this schedule.
Okay, any questions? Any counselors online have questions? Okay, thank you, Rowan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next up is, we have an ordinance to approve. We have ordinance number 495, amending the code to update rights of way use requirements. Rob.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Nancy Werner is, who's one of our staff attorneys, is on. And I'm going to give a brief entrance to this discussion and then ask Nancy to answer any questions. You did have a work session with her prior to my joining you as interim city manager, and so you've had some background. And since then, we had continued talks with Ziply, and Ziply decided to break off discussions at this point. We did invite them to return at any point in time and talk about moving forward with a modified franchise agreement, a licensing agreement. And so that is available if they decide to continue. But I would ask Nancy to provide any staff report that she thinks is advisable, and then open it to questions. Nancy?
All right, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good, great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me tonight. I'll just be as quick as I can, because we have talked about this in in a work session. What we're bringing forward in this ordinance is really an update to the municipal code to have, to make sure that it more clearly sets out what the requirements are for using the rights of way in the city by what you would refer to earlier as the franchised utilities. Right now, the code doesn't have an express provision that requires every utility to get a franchise. There's only Chapter 51 that deals with telecommunications utilities. So what we're proposing, as we've discussed before, are 3 changes, and pretty big changes to Chapter 51 that would provide this transparency that I referenced. So the first would be that we would change it from applying to just telecommunications utilities to applying to all utilities that use the right, that install facilities in the rights of way. The second change would, as Rob just mentioned, would be to have the code require licenses instead of franchises. The difference there is a license wouldn't be negotiated. All of the terms for using the rights of way would be in this new ordinance. And when a company is in the rights of way or wants to come into the rights of way in the city, they would apply, file a license application that would be reviewed and presumably approved by the city as a pretty routine task, as opposed to spending the time and resources negotiating individual franchise agreements with each utility. So that's the second change. The third change, it's not really a change, it's just an impact of changing to this license system and putting everything in the code, is that the equivalent of the franchise fees, the fees for use of the rights of way, the rent for use of the rights of way would have to be set by the council instead of put in the franchise agreements, because we wouldn't have franchise agreements anymore. So those are a very quick overview of the 3 changes we're making. But again, the idea is just to have some clearer standards in the code that if you're a utility and you want to install things in the rights of way or use facilities in the rights of way, here are our rules, here's what you have to do. Again, it promotes transparency. We think it'll be more effective and efficient in terms of right-of-way management, because you will have, once franchises expire and entities, utilities have moved to the license system, you'll have a uniform set of rules and you won't have to worry about, whether there are different timelines provided for in each different franchise agreement. So there was reference earlier about a relocation project, which is a private development issue, so it's different. But if that were a public works project, like a capital improvement project, you can have situations where one utility has to relocate in 30 days in their franchise, another one has 90 days. So you don't have that uniformity. It makes it a little bit harder to make that sequencing go the way you want it to go. So those are some of the benefits of moving to this right-of-way license approach, as opposed to just having a telecommunications franchise provision in your code. I'll just also mention that we did distribute this draft to all the utilities that we're aware of that are in the city or might be coming into the city to get comments. And we did incorporate some of their comments into this final draft. And then finally, if you do choose to move forward with this ordinance, I mentioned that there will be fees that the council needs to adopt. We would come back at the next council meeting, I think, or within the 30 days that this takes for this ordinance to take effect, to have the council consider the right-of-way fees that would be associated with this ordinance. What we talked about before and what would be brought to you should we go this way are just really using the same rates that are currently used by the city in the franchise agreements. So we're not looking at changing anything. We're not going to add wireless to this other than small cell wireless providers that are installing antennas in the actual rights of way. So we don't anticipate this really changing anything in terms of revenue, other than I think sometimes you get a little bit of an enforcement bump when you have a new ordinance like this and you provide notice to entities. You might find that there are some entities that own facilities in your rights of way and for some reason just never got a franchise, or maybe it expired and they stopped paying fees. And also, as I previously explained, the fee structure would also cover any entity that is using a third party's facilities to provide services. So this would most likely be a telecommunications company that leases lines from a third party to provide their services. We just want to make sure that those entities are also subject to fees so that we have a kind of a more competitively neutral fee structure. Otherwise, the facility owner has to pay fees, but entities competing with them using their own facilities, which by law they're required to open up to other competitive providers, those competitors wouldn't have to pay. So that's the point of that. We don't know if there's any of those resellers, we call them, operating in North Plains. So we're not sure if it would bring any revenue. This, again, isn't aimed at raising revenue, but it is possible that there might be a little bit of a bump from those two issues. So I know I went through that quickly, but please ask any questions you have. I'd be happy to answer them.
Let's start with the council. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, I had one quick comment to make. A couple of the utilities didn't provide timely comment, and I think it was two, but we allowed them to provide input to be fair and transparent, really, as part of the process. There was no need for them to be there on that specific time and hour, and so we extended some time so they could provide comment to Nancy to add to the draft ordinance if it need be.
Did you see any really super negative comments or I mean feedback?
I don't think so. I didn't see anything that was horrid. It was just really comment, and I think if you found 10 utilities, there might be some different comment in each, but what's being proposed and what Nancy brought forward is virtually identical to other cities in the county.
And I know we've talked about this, and it seems to be transparent, and it seems to be pretty, I mean, pretty level across the board, equal across the board. So any counselors online have any comments or questions for Nancy? Any counselors here in the hall? Counselor Page?
No, I just wanted to know more what the end result would be as far as the revenue coming in. How much of it changed? How much of it is a burden on the people using our lines, the utilities? I still need to know what that number is going to look like, but it sounds fair. It sounds good, easier as well.
Okay. Councilor Sheldon?
Yeah, my question's related to the marked up document. Not anything specific because I've been through the document, but I presume we're approving the first reading of this as it is modified. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The red line is intending to show what amendments to Chapter 51 you would be approving.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? If not, what's the preference of the council?
I'll move approve the first reading of ordinance 495 to amend the municipal code to update the rights of way use requirements.
And I will second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. So ordinance number 495 is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of North Plains, Oregon, amending municipal code to update and modify the rights of way management provisions. So this will come back for second reading?
Yes.
Sounds great. All right. Any other housekeeping on this topic?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
You as well. All right, on to 12A, the city manager report, the UGB relook update, and then the revised political activity memo 2024. Rob.
Thank you, Mayor. The council has approved an operating plan for the relook, the revised relook. And tonight, we're bringing forward recommended names to fill the committee. We put out a couple pleas for help and for people applying. There's not been a huge response, and we're down to one vacancy at this point, and we've received a few applications more, and we'll look at those and come back with a recommendation for the final seat. And we'll send that out to the council. And we are also have an open date of October 3rd, and would like to recommend that be the first meeting for the RELOOK committee, RELOOK Advisory Committee, or the RAC, RAC. And begin the process that's been outlined in the work plan and approved by the council.
Okay. All right, any comments or questions?
The 3rd is on a Thursday.
Yes.
I always work on Thursdays. Will that be an issue?
What, is your evening filled with the
I
work
work
council?
until 8 p.m.
8
6 a.m.
p.m.
until 8 p.m.
Probably a little late, but
This is for the advisory committee.
this is for the
This is for the
advisory
advisory
committee,
committee.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm needed for that.
No, you're not required to be there. No. We'd be happy to take any comments, or the committee will, they'll be organizing, but any comments you might wish to pass on or observations, we're always happy to. And part of I think one of the basic notions of this committee is that we, and with your approval, feel that anyone can come to the table and comment and be involved in any way they choose to do. And we would certainly welcome comments from the council, or the committee would.
Do you have any idea on what time that would start in the evening?
We haven't set a time, but we could start anytime from 6 on, probably.
Okay. All right. Counselor Payton, Counselor Smith, Counselor Martinez, any questions or comments for Rob?
Nope, sounds like a good plan.
Counselor Payton?
I just wanted to double check with Rob or staff on how did we advertise this? I know we did the website, Facebook. Can you share if we did it in the newsletter as well, or any other outreach to get more members on the RAC?
We have done a lot to get more board members. We also solicited some public events, and give Bill credit here on this. We had applications in several languages in the event that potential applicants may not have had English as a primary language, or at least as a readily usable language. And the library had focused to and had applications over either last weekend or weekend before last. Robin has been very helpful also soliciting people. And at the Garlic Festival, we had applications at the chamber booth. And so we've had them available at City Hall. We have had some people pick them up at City Hall too.
And at the dog park.
Oh, at the dog park opening too. Thank you, Lori.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Question?
Rob, can that move ahead if they don't fill that one position? Can you move ahead?
That would be my recommendation. Bill and I are going to beat the bushes for a candidate, and if we can't find one, maybe the chief can help us find somebody who's loitering too long or something.
Okay, thank you. That'd be good. I'm gonna keep moving.
Councilor Kendall, just to follow up on that, we do have some folks who very late after talking to us, like didn't fully realize they qualified, namely people who live here from other countries.
Oh.
That was part of the translation. So we do have at least one person who's a resident, not a citizen, couldn't vote on the referendum, but they're very interested in participating. And so we should have a final seat member.
Good. That's good to hear. All right. Any other? All right, hearing none. Rob, your next topic. Revised political activity memo 2024.
The city attorney Chris Green provided a document that applied and was really pointed toward the city council, the staff members of North Plains, and boards and commission members, and basically reminded the ABCs of election years and what's legal and what's not from employees, board members, and elected officials. It's really a basic document from my opinion, having been through multiple elections and received similar material. It's complete. It's not too long, but what it does is provide and any pitfalls for staff members, board members, or council, pitfalls they might accidentally walk into, or what to do and not to do. It's easy to read document. Some will be more interested than others in it, but it's really advisory. We're not giving legal advice per se to one individual, but people who fall under a city umbrella, and at times without knowing, it's very easy to make mistakes and mix politics with what's supposed to be neutral territory.
Any comments or questions on that document? And just to be clear, the document does state, that city councilors, they can endorse candidates outside of their capacity at this table. So for example, I could not say I endorse X in this setting.
Correct.
But if I'm out on the street or in my yard or in the public, I can say that I, Terry Linehan, endorse so-and-so as the mayor.
That's
I
correct.
can use my title associated with my name and the endorsement.
Yes, and that would apply the same to a public employee.
Correct.
That they can't campaign inside the building, but when they leave the building, they can talk to folks and endorse whomever they wish to endorse.
Right. And that holds true too for appointed officials. So like planning commissioners, economic development commissioners, those folks.
Yes.
If they chose to, I just want to make sure that
Yes.
that's clear as well.
That is not an acceptable practice in a meeting that is a city meeting, but they could go somewhere else and out in the street or in the grocery store unless it's prohibited by the store, but they just can't do it in their official capacity inside an official meeting.
Sounds great. Okay. Any comments or questions from counselors online? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. Next up are our council reports. Anyone have anything that they would like to report?
I have a report for the Parks Board. I was there. And a lot of discussion on bylaws, which needs to be done. That's something that I think Bill is guiding along pretty well. And they have a good template from the EDC. And so that's going to be their mission over the ensuing number of meetings, is to tackle that piece. So they were all basically sent home on an assignment to look that over, and so they can have further discussion on it. But I think it's the right time to have those in place, and I think it's a great step for them. There were some discussions about concerts in the park. The last concert in the park was fairly lightly attended, so they might want to rethink some of those things, or maybe combining with some other event that's maybe doesn't have a concert in it. And then they had an update on the ceremony at the dog park, which had taken place on the Saturday previous. So, and that was a fun thing. So other than that, they talked about a few things where they might need to see maybe in the budget in the future, especially in regards to some changes or some additions. And those things are probably fitting for the ensuing next biennial budget session. That's pretty much Parks and Rec.
All right.
Yep.
For the economic development on the fourth, was quite busy. It's a very busy meeting. The Chamber of Commerce was there and they're talking about submitting a survey, a short to the point survey to the people in North Plains, asking them how it is going, what they need from the city. There's some discussion, they've done it for a while because they thought maybe the Economic Development Commission was gonna do it. So there's a little bit of overlap there, but the chamber is going to go ahead and start that process and give the information back to the general committee. So that's a pretty good meeting. Russ is going to be in charge of that. So Russ had a lot to say to that. So thank you, Russ, for looking out for the businesses. Missed the dog park opening. I really wanted to go there because it's Philly Eagle Scout. However, Saturday's my work day and there's been a lot of things happening, so I couldn't really leave. So I was kind of stuck there managing some stuff. I missed that part, which I'm chagrined for that.
Councilor Kendall, you attended the planning commission? Yes?
I did,
Did
late,
you?
yeah, late.
Okay.
That was basically over, it was pretty standard stuff.
Okay. Councilor Martinez, Councilor Papin, Councilor Smith, any reports or comments, questions on your part?
Nope, I have one next month, I think. EDC next month.
Yep. Okay. I attended the Washington County Coordinating Committee today. It was actually a really full day for me with outside meetings, but of course, the WCCC is always a little heavy on the metro. They did talk about, had another presentation from the urban growth report for Metro and talked a lot about the deficits that they are seeing in the future, and also that the city of Sherwood is actually looking at an urban growth boundary expansion. So we talked a lot about what they are doing and how they might be looking at providing middle housing and also cottage cluster housing in a future UGB. And one thing that they're actually doing, going to be doing, is adding in their zone, in their code, like cottage cluster zoning and middle housing zoning. So they're going to incorporate that in their existing code so that when a developer comes in and says, you know, it's going to develop housing, they'll have to have a percentage of their housing that fall into those particular categories.
That's based on their size, correct?
That's based on their size,
Okay.
and so it's interesting, and I was hoping that maybe Steve might be able to connect with Sherwood in the future, just to see what that might look like, and see if that is something that our planning commission, you know, might consider down the road. Because there's a huge concern about, you know, this middle housing and affordable housing and cottage clusters. And if it's not defined, right, then developers will kind of come in and elbow and push and say, you know, we're not going to do that. They're going to build whatever they want to build, right? And so the city of Sherwood is actually looking at this in a proactive way, saying, we want to be able to provide this middle housing for our city, but we want to be able to also hold the developer to task, right? And so it's really kind of an interesting direction that they're going in, and they're hoping to have an incredible, you know, just a great number of community engagement conversations about that to get them to that point. But I thought that was a really interesting part of the conversation at the WCCC today, which was really nice. The roadshow, so The LOC, League of Oregon Cities, and the state is really focusing on the 2025 state transportation package. And so they've been doing road shows. I think they've already had 2 of them. Hillsborough, they're gonna have one at Hillsborough Friday, September 27th. I think they're doing Multnomah County on the Thursday before on the 26th, and then Hillsborough, Washington County will be at the Hillsborough Civic Center on Friday, the 27th. Interesting, they'll have a round table. They've invited certain folks, and they have the invite list. I think there's one golden ticket out there, and nobody knows who that golden ticket recipient will be yet, but I mean, it could be me, it could be Banks, it could be anybody at this point. But they're having public testimony actually between 5:30 and 7 on a Friday night, which we thought was really interesting. But at anyhow, the road show, I know McLean's been involved, and they've been doing this for, I think this is their second gig on that. They still want to know, I mean, if we can't attend, if folks have a really strong desire and an opinion about the 2025 state transportation packet, it's really important that you get your voice heard. And if you don't want to go to the public testimony at 5:30 on a Friday night, there are ways to at least be able to provide public testimony. And I could certainly track that down and make sure that we can get that out there to folks. But just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that roadshow. And if you want to attend, this is great. After that meeting, I had a meeting with Chair Harrington and the mayors. Every month we have that Mayors Plus One. She talked a lot about the library levy and how, I guess, Robin can fill us in at some point, but they're looking at a different rate change. And so she didn't talk about the rate, like a rate for the library levy. I think someone had asked her the question, and she skirted around it and didn't really give us a real clear answer on what that was going to look like. And as Commissioner Worley explained earlier, you know, they talked about all their departments doing a 3 to 5% cut. So that's probably why she didn't really dive into that a lot. She talked a lot about the jail and the future for that, and current staffing at the jail. I think she said that they closed another pod, so there might be another 1 pod. Chief Jones, I'm not sure if that's what she shared today, that there's only 1 pod now at the jail. No more. Okay. And then she talked a little bit about the deflection, and that Commissioner Woolley mentioned as well. So, and then I have the MSTEP meeting with the county commissioners on the 30th. And that's about all I have to report. So, any comments, questions?
That all you did today? Sorry.
And then I'm spending my evening with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, lots to do, lots to be involved in. So, yeah, that's about it.
Thank you.
I think I have library board on Wednesday. Yep. So, all right, anything else? Counselor Smith, Counselor Martinez, Counselor Papin?
Oh, don't think so.
Okay. All right, with that then, I'll go ahead and close the city council meeting at 9:18. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the
Thank
rest
you.
of
Good night. Good night.
You.